Your Tuesday forecast calls for increasing clouds throughout the day. Afternoon highs topping out in the mid-80s. There is a chance for an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Tuesday night, slight chance of a shower storm before midnight, otherwise mostly cloudy and 63. Wednesday, a chance of a shower storm late day, otherwise mostly sunny and 84. By Wednesday night, mostly clear and 58. On Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Thank you for letting us be of service to you this morning. Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for being on the receiving end of either the YouTube or the Rumble videos. So far, so good. We haven't had any of the frontline COVID-19 doctors, Paul Marik, et al., on with us. So apparently we've avoided getting strike 3 from YouTube so far. There are lots to do today. We're going to have visits from Melanie Collette with the Project 21. Melanie has got a piece out regarding the Biden administration and Title IX, which was supposed to protect and again create opportunities for women to make sure that federally funded higher education institutions, especially, made fair the scholarship opportunities to male and female athletes especially. And it yet again reminds us why these government mandates don't work and eventually wind up getting weaponized against the very people that they're supposed to be working for. And we'll talk with Melanie Collette from Project 21 about that this morning. Also from the campaign trail, Eddie Garcia, one of the GOP hopefuls. Voting begins in just a couple of days in our 45-day-long voting season in the senatorial primaries, and that'll go on until June 18th, which is primary culmination day there. Also joining us, Nancy Koenig from the Convention of States Virginia branch. She's their grassroots director of this George Soros versus the Convention of States thing going on there. Our friends from the Alzheimer's Association. Max got his notebook. Of course, you heard Tommy and the weather. Several folks have asked about this, the Oklahoma tornadoes and ways you can help those who are victims of the Oklahoma tornadoes. The Red Cross, redcross.org, is taking donations so that you can make contributions to their website directly. There's also okdisasterhelp.org is a direct, localized help organization through the Oklahoma state government. It's okdisasterhelp.org. And then you can also /donate. It takes you directly to the donate page. And the Salvation Army is also on the ground in Oklahoma helping with the tornado relief. It is southernusa.salvationarmy.org. And they bracket their websites by regions there. The Albemarle County School Board has increased its budget by nearly 4%. Will the grades go up by that much? Of course not, because these are virtue signaling budgets that give more people more pork, basically, to spend. Because construction projects make better educational outcomes. I say this as the product of a New York City public high school that was built in, read my lips, 1933. Still in use today. As a matter of fact, it produced your humble host here, Joe Thomas in the morning. It also produced, depending on your attitude towards them, celebrities like Jordan Belfort went to school with me, as did Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City. All products of this high school that was built in 1933. Oh my goodness. How could anyone possibly be learning in a school that was built in 1933? we must build new schools. That's how education achievement happens. Meanwhile, teachers continue to not be able to afford to live in the community. And it was with that, quick, allenandallen.com. Today's the last day for nominations for their hometown heroes. Apologies. Again, their email contacts with me were going to the old shop, and they don't forward. This is no forwarding from there. So I've looked around. Nobody else has mentioned it either. So apologies to them. I think their emails were coming to me at the old place, and never the twain shall meet. But today is the deadline for that, allenandallen.com. So we're talking about the school budget, but there's a report. Our friends at NBC 29 did a special report on the cost of housing vis-a-vis city employees in the city of Charlottesville. And I think this is applicable all across the area, as there's a scarcity in most urban areas of available housing. And nobody wants to charge less for housing because, well, the government charges you more to build it. Every time you turn around. And it's, right now, I've been told it's upwards of $100,000 that a builder must spend on a piece of housing before they put the first shovel into the ground. And that's a problem. And you're going to see, we have the NBC 29. It starts off with the Parks and Rec director for the city of Charlottesville talking about where his employees have to come from in order to get to work.
The housing cost gap is big enough, far enough away to make it worthwhile, even with so many miles to commute.
Just think about that with the cost of gas. So they're spending a lot of money just on traveling, just to come to work.
City Councilor Michael Payne agrees.
It's a huge issue across pretty much every department in the city.
City Hall has to try and balance salaries and taxes against rents and mortgages.
We hear regularly all the time from employees that either they can't afford to even rent in the city, or maybe they could afford to rent here, but they want to become a homeowner, and the only thing that they can afford is maybe not even in Albemarle County. It could even be in Fluvanna, Buckingham, and even further out.
Beth Chuck is with Charlottesville Schools. They're facing the same dilemma.
36% of our employees live in the city, and another 40 live in Albemarle County, and then the rest is kind of a mix beyond that.
Kyle Irvin works with the Charlottesville Police Department. He's another employee who does not live in the city.
It's an expensive city to live in, and like I said, the inventory is low, so if there were more options here in the city, of course, I would live here.
Some say commuting cops are a public safety concern. The department disagrees.
If something, an emergency happens and you need all hands on deck, do you think it would be more viable if officers lived in the city versus outside?
Regardless of where they live, we're still able to respond. We're still able to do our job.
So here is, the breakdown of the cost of living wage calculation from MIT, and you see some of it in terms of how much you need to make per hour there in the costs.
According to MIT's living wage calculator, someone needs to earn $48,000 a year to afford to live in Charlottesville.
Now do the math on your living wage if you want to have some fun. So everyone says, well, we need to have a living wage. We need to increase the wage to $15 an hour. That doesn't come close to that number. But here's the problem with this. So the city has, and so does the county, a robust subsidy program that will pay the difference for those who qualify. So what exactly is the incentive for a property owner to lower any of their rents? And understand, not a bug, a feature. They want to control housing. This is where the narrative of the unhoused comes in, because the government, in its attempts to continue to pander, must continue to find things that it can give people under the auspices of rights. You have a right to housing, Certainly, we've enacted legislation that will keep people from redlining you out of housing. How's that working? We see more gentrification since our regulations regarding redlining and racial profiling. Poverty becomes a bigger issue because what do you do for money, honey? What do you do for kicks? As the philosopher Angus Young once questioned. So think about that. Ruminate on it. What creates your wage? Most economists that I've talked to point to your replaceability. Sports, Major League Baseball has a statistic that they've created in the last 10 or so years called wins over replacement. Wins against replacement, I guess it is, WAR. And it's to take the average of your position's statistics from all the other players in Major League Baseball. Say you're a center fielder. So all the other center fielders in Major League Baseball have hit 275, and you're hitting 325. And what does that equal to? And it's sabermetrics. It's to get the math nerds into sports, really, is what it is. But the same can be held economically. What is your wages against replacement? What is your replaceability? And this is where city employees become an issue, because the city, without the marketplace to fight against, really has no upwards pressure against their wages. They can just continue to tax more and charge more, which is interesting that these city employees, they have just been given by the General Assembly the opportunity to collectively bargain. And I grew up, as I mentioned, I grew up in a city that was and is still using high schools that were built in the 30s. When I was a child, teenager, formative, we would seemingly have a sanitation workers strike every 6 months or so. If you've ever seen the movie Joker, there's Gotham City, is you watch the film, this is a documentary of what my childhood was like in New York City. Piles of trash on the side of the road, rolling sanitation workers striking for higher wages from the city. And we're going down that same path here, yet what is the replaceability of somebody? This is why an economy that's driven by service sector is difficult to manage, because you're looking at people who are doing somebody's dry cleaning or making sandwiches for them. That's the extent of our economic opportunity in many places in the city of Charlottesville. You go over to Waynesboro, you see Hershey and Northrop Grumman. Yet again, though, you see the municipal leaders, the elected officials, shrugging and saying, well, we're obviously going to have to build a lot of housing for the people who are going to move here to take those jobs. And you say, well, why can't the people who are already here take those jobs? And you get that faraway look of like, have you met the people who live here already? And I have, and that's offensive to me. The attitude that you have to have a bunch of new come-heres because you have high-tech jobs coming to Louisa County and the Amazon headquarters there. But your wages are driven by what you contribute to the enterprise that you work for. How replaceable are you? If you've just started working and you don't know a lot about the job, you're imminently replaceable because somebody else can come along and they're just as new as you are. So what do you contribute to your employer? And the more the government gets involved in this, the more they don't want you to look at it that way. They want you to look at those employers as oligarchs who are holding your family hostage on some farm that they control and that you're stuck with. I mean, we've even heard National Football League players refer to their position in the world akin to slavery. Millions of dollars a year in slavery. So what do you do for money, honey? What do you do for kicks? That's the question you have to ask. What is it that you contribute to your employer? And if you feel like you contribute a lot to the employer, then you should be compensated justly for it. But that's a negotiation between you and your employer. And then when you get to rents, the same is true. What is the competition to drive down those costs? Especially when the state and federal and locally municipal governments start getting in with subsidies, because then there is no downward pressure on rents.
This is the Racing Wire Minute with Brian Belansky.
McLaughlin rebounds at Barber. That story next.
The Racing Wire Minute is presented by
She can stand, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Oh, she can stand.
Learn more at She Can STEM. A message brought to you by the Ad Council.
Scott McLaughlin responded to the gut punch of having his third-place finish at St. Petersburg stripped away after Team Penske was caught cheating with its push-to-pass system. The penalties moved McLaughlin to last place in the point standings. The win Sunday at Barber moved McLaughlin from last to ninth in the standings. That's the good news. The bad news, had the penalty not happened, McLaughlin would now be in third place. At Barber, McLaughlin's teammate Will Power finished second. Linus Lundqvist finished third. Next up for the IndyCar Series, the Sancio Grand Prix on the road course at Indy on Saturday, May 11th.
Your Tuesday forecast calls for increasing clouds throughout the day. Afternoon highs topping out in the mid-80s. There is a chance for an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Tuesday night, slight chance of a shower storm before midnight, otherwise mostly cloudy and 63. Wednesday, a chance of a shower storm late day, otherwise mostly sunny and 84. By Wednesday night, mostly clear and 58. On Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning, and thank you for tuning in, joining in. Share this as well if you enjoy watching the program. Share the link with friends of yours around the area. That's so it's a harsh reality, the cost of living, because again, the premise is it's someone else's doing. It's somebody else's regulation. What if you applied the same logic, twisted logic, I view, on marriage? What if the government got to subsidize your marriage? I can't afford my wife's tastes. If she wants a new car every year, I need a government subsidy for that. I'm just, it's an abstract and it's an absurd thing, you think. I've said this in the past, and this is one of the things I hold dearly truthful in my heart of hearts over all these years. I think a lot of municipal governments do their citizens a disservice, and it's because they at the end of the day, they don't see you as a human being, they see you as a vote. So that transaction really only counts once every whatever number of years it is in between when you voted them into office in the first place and when you're going to be asked to do it again. And they only see you as this vote. So therefore, they won't do what I view to be the most appropriate thing, is if there's no jobs in their area based on your skills, and the government insists, and I'm not saying they should, but insists on subsidizing something in order to improve your lot in life, instead of an annual subsidy for your housing costs, give somebody who needs to find a less expensive place to live and a better paying job a one-time free rental from U-Haul and a map to where the jobs are. But they won't do that because at the end of the day, they only see you as a vote. This is why they do these things like these government programs and these subsidies for the cost of pretty much anything. Because they don't want you to leave because they're counting on you to be a vote. They're counting on your vote. And as long as you vote, then we'll just make sure you're comfortable in between election cycles. And it's harsh, and I don't think they do it, well, let me qualify that. I think some of them do it intentionally. I don't think they all do it intentionally, and I don't think they begin to do it intentionally. They begin it with the honest compassion of somebody saying, wow, I don't want to see somebody on the streets, or I don't want to see somebody struggling to find a place to live, so they say, let's help. And they have these massive budgets. It's $250 million in the city of Charlottesville. It's another almost $750 million in Albemarle County. Think about that. One county in the center of Virginia is going to appropriate from its taxpayers and then spend almost $1 billion just next year on, your chief industry is either the National Ground Intelligence Center, so military intelligence, or academic intelligence, quote unquote, at the University of Virginia. So it's not like they were out there building pad-ready sites for light industrial manufacturing, building the infrastructure necessary to get a data center or something like that, like you see up in Northern Virginia, where they say our electric costs are going to have to go up because the data centers in Northern Virginia are drawing more from the grid than our wind farms and solar panels are going to generate. Huh, really? Gosh, if somebody had only said something about that beforehand, like we did. And of course, their debate point will be like, "Well, we're here now, and we need to, be, yeah." But acknowledging what you did wrong to get to a position where the cost of electricity, the cost of utilities are all going up on top of the cost of housing, you start saying, "How did we get here?" Because maybe, just maybe, we need to start undoing some of the things we've been doing. We watched as modest as they were, Governor Youngkin's tax cuts actually created higher collections in the Virginia Treasury. Huh. Who'd have thought that? Faster than you can say Milton Friedman. You can turn an economy around by leaving more money in each other's pockets so that maybe we go out for a sandwich so that waitress doesn't lose her job or is compensated better with higher wages because she turns over more tables or any number of reasons. But if all you want, and this is a sad state with a university of such repute in it, is that we pat these university students on the behind at the end of final exercises. And if you're wondering what those are, that's what the University of Virginia calls graduation. So at the end of final exercise, we pat our recently graduated wahoos on the behind, tell them when homecomings weekend is, also how they pronounce it in Charlottesville, and tell them we'll see them when they retire. Rather than saying, hey, you've got an idea for a new battery technology or some new energy source or something like that. How about you stay here and we'll have this innovation center where you can go do it. They've even built those, and they've turned out to be nothing more than office space for UVA and UVA health staffers rather than an incubator to build industry. I mean, because the modern manufacturing industry, and again, you talk about how somebody's wages are driven. If you're helping somebody manufacture the future of nanotech or microprocessing or batteries. Maybe you're part of a group that's working on hydrogen fuel cells. Have you been reading about the partnership between Honda, it's Honda, Toyota, I believe Mazda. They've all innovated. They've got a 400 some odd horsepower V8 hydrogen fuel cell engine. Now, my green friends will jump into this and say, yes, but it creates water vapor, and water vapor is the second most dangerous pollutant. Truth. Right after our carbon dioxide emissions, water vapor is considered a dangerous pollutant by these people. But the point being, well, stay here and do that. Why do you have to go somewhere else and do it? Stay here. You've already spent 4, 5, 6 years in Charlottesville anyway. Stay. Start your business here. Hire a few people. Other college towns like State College, Pennsylvania, do exactly that. They invest into holding on to their recent graduates so that some of the municipal costs allocated towards getting them around on buses and things like that can be made back a little bit in tax collections. But we say, no, we're quite satisfied making cheeseburgers for them, serving them some adult beverages when they get old enough, selling them some magazines. And we shrug and we wave goodbye at the end of final exercises. And these could be the drivers of many new industries. And to say, once you've made your fortune, come on back. We have retirement communities galore here. So then your second economy is caring for those who are in their elder years, the seasoned citizens. What is that worth? I know people who'd say, my gosh, a good adult care nurse is priceless. Are they being paid priceless wages? Scale it up, and you will see that this wage disparity is actually set up by the government, not a bug, but a feature, to get us to a point of saying, well, something has to be done. This is something, so we better do that. And by that I mean nationalizing industries and taking the marketplace out of the equation in the attempt to care for people, which of course doesn't turn into care at all. That's the problem with all this, is you say, well, Joe, how could you be against caring for somebody? I'm not. I'm against what they purport to say is caring for you, because it's not. It's not caring. There's no human dignity into it. Go into a housing project and see what it becomes. So this campaign to prove to you that people don't make enough money around here is all driven by the fact that the government is already subsidizing that behavior. And they want it to be a premise that you then shrug and say, well, I guess we really, should have the government control the restaurants and the hotels and everything else so that they can be fair.
Your Tuesday forecast calls for increasing clouds throughout the day. Afternoon highs topping out in the mid-80s. There is a chance for an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Tuesday night, slight chance of a shower storm before midnight, otherwise mostly cloudy and 63. Wednesday, a chance of a shower storm late day, otherwise mostly sunny and 84. By Wednesday night, mostly clear and 58. On Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning news. As we spent a little bit of time in the last segment talking about the government, Munchausen's by government syndrome as it applies to housing costs, and this hand-wringing and navel-gazing over, oh my gosh, things cost so much and we need to do something about it. Like I said, the conceit is, you get somebody behind a podium and they say, we'll fix this so it never happens again. And of course, that is a con designed to make you vote for them and then go away until the next time they need you to elect them. And one of those places is the issue of Title IX. Title IX, of course, you would say, well, hold on a second, Joe. Title IX, isn't that supposed to protect women athletes? How is it that we're in a world where men are jumping in the pool with women and dominating their races, and colleges are shrugging their shoulders? Joining us from the National Center for Public Policy Research and Project 21, Melanie Collette penned a great piece on this very fraud of Title IX. Good morning, Melanie. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you.
So talk about, Title IX, clearly genders boys and girls, student athletes, and that kind of thing. Talk about how they can, with a straight face, sit there and say, Title IX is designed to protect the trans athletes as well.
It's not, though. It was originally built and constructed to protect women, and because it acknowledged that there were differences between men and women, that men are stronger, more muscular, and when it comes to athletics, that they are definitely different, and obviously many other ways. That was what Title IX was originally designed for, to enable women to participate in sports, to get scholarships, and have the same opportunities as men. And now what they've done with these new regulations, which, people need to pay attention when it comes to law. The laws are great and they all sound wonderful, but the devil's always in the regulation.
Oh, yeah.
So, and regulations are written by these unelected bureaucrats. And that's what the Biden administration has done here. Now they are acknowledging gender identity. In other words, as WebMD articulates it, if you have a sense or a feeling that you are a different gender than your biological gender, and obviously that is not, at least in my opinion, just not accurate, just because you feel a certain way.
Well, and talking about, obviously we're talking about scholarship monies being available. We're talking about opportunities for young people to get into colleges like, in our hometown, University of Virginia, or places like that, to perhaps for the first time in their family's history, go to a college and achieve something new. And we're damaging that in this idea that all entities are created equal. But isn't this, Melanie, proof that even the best intended government regulation like Title IX is eventually going to be turned and weaponized against the very people that it was designed to quote unquote help?
I feel like it's always going to be like that, especially, if our electorate is going to continue to allow leftists to do these things by voting for them. Just got to be honest. These are the types of policies that you are subjecting yourselves to. You may not think that it's all that important, but it absolutely is, because of things like this. They can do this with any law. They've done it with immigration law. By just making up different regulations than the spirit of the law. This is the same principle here that they've done with Title IX. Now we're recognizing gender identity as if it is actual gender. It's making it equivalent, and that is just not the case. Gender identity and biological gender are not the same thing. And what they've done with these Title IX regulations is make it the same thing. But more than that, they've damaged opportunities for women, which is what the law was supposed to benefit.
So where are the women's groups? Where's the National Organization of Women? Where are these groups coming out? I mean, we see at the end of the NCAA women's basketball tournament, some ESPN reporter will ask, and they'll get a gotcha moment with a women's basketball player or something like that. But where are the national organizations, these unions that are supposed to be out there protecting the differences between men and women?
You know, and when those many of those groups, such as the ones that you've mentioned, were established, they were so brave to step forward and do so and fight for the rights of women. And now that women's rights are being summarily attacked by the government, they're being silent. It's sad that they don't have the courage to speak up and say, no, somebody who identifies as a woman is just not the same as being a woman. There are biological, physical differences. And in this particular instance, specifically, it could not possibly be more pronounced.
Well, and you talked about the biological, background of it. I thought these were the folks who told us from 2019 to, I guess they never really stopped saying, we're going to follow the science. How has that been put onto the back burner?
Yeah, because the science says, XXXY. Like that's the science.
Pretty straightforward.
That's ultimately the science. And why are we not following that? That's an excellent question. The level of hypocrisy and kind of like, picking and choosing when we want to follow the science and when we don't, just giving in to these liberal mobs and these people who really need our help. Is what they really need. But instead, what we're doing is affirming things that we shouldn't be affirming.
Melanie Collette is on with us from the National Center for Public Policy Research, Project 21. If you go there, she's got an incredible piece on Title IX. We're talking about that, but even beyond that, Melanie, we talk about, you just brought up the issue of gender dysphoria, which up until just a few years ago was considered something that needed discussion, therapy, and this victim shaming silliness that we've engaged in. It seems like we can no longer say, hey, are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling upset with yourself? Are you feeling in some way that you as an entity are inadequate? Let's sit down. We're not allowed to do that anymore. And I worry we're going to have, and we've seen spikes in suicides and worse depression than we consider by capitulating to it and saying, no, you're not depressed. That's just who you are.
That's for sure. I'm a former educator, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why I'm a former educator is because of this trend in the public school system. If I had a student who said that the sky was red, and we all know that the sky is actually blue, we'd send them to an eye doctor. We'd say something is wrong, because when you physically look at the sky, it is blue, it is not red. So that is something that needs to be addressed. But for some reason, when it comes to gender, we're not doing that, and it does not make any sense. I don't really understand the I don't understand the rationale, to be honest with you, how you think you're helping these kids. And then to suggest that, okay, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to affirm that madness by allowing you to permanently alter your body and do just very bad things. It really is like a Frankenstein-like experiment that's been done on our children, and it's very sad.
You bring up Mary Shelley's work, but I mean, you talk about that era. That era of dark medical science when we were just experimenting with all sorts of things that we thought we were brilliant. We can recreate the human genome even to that point. Melanie, are we enabling our darkest impulses to play games with people that, quite honestly, I listen to some of these folks, they have this subtext of dripping scorn that makes it seem like they view the people they're helping as inferior to them.
They do, and just the fact that they've now listen. If you're 18 years older and you want to do whatever you want with your body, fine. But we're talking about, in a lot of these instances, we're talking about children. And to your point about following the science, there's tons of science, particularly in education, that says that children's brains are underdeveloped. In fact, are not developed until into your 20s. So why would you allow children to make life-altering decisions about their bodies and actually affirm that instead of getting that child help? It makes absolutely no sense.
Is there a moral aspect to this, Melanie? I feel like, when I had depressions as a kid, I think we all go through those moments where we doubt ourselves and those things. But at some point, even though I wasn't raised in the most religious household, I knew that I was created for a reason. All these parts were put together to serve a purpose, and I just needed to figure out what that was. And maybe that's where my depressions were coming from. I hadn't successfully figured out what my purpose was in this world, as many teenagers do. Are we missing that moral part of it, that God has created you, and whether you're happy or not, maybe it's just because you haven't figured out why yet?
I think that there's definitely something to that. And I would even go a step further. Not only is it moral, but it's spiritual. I would suggest to you that in these contexts, and when you see these things are happening, that is demonic energy. And I know people don't like to hear people say those things, and they think it's kind of woo-woo or whatever, but it really isn't. Anybody who's read the Bible and seen the terrible things that happen when there's demonic energies afoot and around, and anybody who reads the Bible knows that we are surrounded by it in this world at this point in time, would understand why, right seems wrong and wrong seems right, or that the governments and that the predominant amount of people, it would seem, because that's the way Satan would have it, has things all backward.
He is the ultimate populist, isn't he? The deceiver. And so
indeed.
So when you go back into the schools, and so much of this is about fifth graders and sixth graders and kids, I think there's a big problem with our adults as well, who are chasing popularity, and they're chasing this kind of Munchausian's nightmare almost of, I want to be popular, so I'll do this because it seems to make me popular. But especially in the classrooms of fourth and fifth and sixth graders, you've got to be very careful, because if a kid is seen as getting special attention, all the other kids are going to say, I'm going to do that. Not because they actually feel that way, but because we all want attention, don't we?
I think everybody wants attention. And I do think that what is really problematic in those classroom settings is that there are things that are allowed in order to make every kid feel special and all those things. And those things typically, like the transgender movement and teachers sharing with their kids about their own sexuality, they're little tiny kids. First of all, I would argue as someone who was in education for 24 years, that an adult who is in a teaching capacity should never be sharing their sexuality, because it's not their business. So
we used to arrest people for that, didn't we, Melanie?
Exactly. There was a time when adults would be arrested for that, for talking to other people's children about sexuality. But now, not only will you not get arrested, it's downright encouraged in a public school system, because we want to affirm that everybody's okay, that every behavior is okay, that every feeling and thought that you have should be affirmed, when that is just simply not accurate at all. There are many thoughts that you have every day that need to be questioned and evaluated and critically thought about. And when you're an adult in a classroom setting, you're supposed to do that for your kids and help them to be able to develop that skill on their own, instead of just affirming every thought that they have.
We were pointing out earlier this morning that one of our local school divisions has increased their budget by 4% this year, just adopted it. And I asked, just with a smart alecky tone, as I will, are our kids' grades going to get 4% better for the extra spending? But isn't that, at the end of the day, what's really happening is our schools have stopped teaching math and reading and science, and they're actually now these indoctrinations, these social experiment projects, and the kids are coming out of there incapable of reading, so they can't go. If you say go read the Bible, they don't know how.
Oh no, not at all. And not only are they participating in not being dedicated to teaching the fundamentals, they are also participating in things like grade inflation. They're which is ridiculous. They're cooking the books when it comes to how many kids graduate. They're allowing kids to graduate that shouldn't. They have these crazy things called no zero policies, and it's all intertwined because they will connect it to something like transgenderism or some other kind of problem or issue that that child is having. So that's why you need to give them a break on their grades. Public schools in general, I'm not going to demonize all public schools, but as a general vibe, it's been my experience that public schools are not in the business of making sure that kids actually have the knowledge that that high school diploma says they have. And that is a huge issue.
Well, this is the conceit that's happened for generations. Our public schools were established with the idea that they would help even the playing field when it's become the opposite. Anti-redlining statutes were enacted to stop poor communities from staying poor, but we've seen gentrification get worse. When are we going to stop believing these people, Melanie, when they come in and tell us, oh, Title IX is going to fix everything for women athletes, until men decide they want to jump in the pool or get on the golf course with them?
Exactly. And you're absolutely right. We need to stop believing them. And the thing that kills me about the whole equality thing and making people the equity thing, making people equal, is that, especially in the school system, is how are you making people equal if they don't leave those facilities with the same information as their counterparts? Just because both of their grades say that they have an A does not mean that they're equal. Right. That is not equity. That is not equality. If both kids have A's, but one kid only has 50% of the information and the other kid actually does have that 98% of the information, then guess what? They're still not equal, because they're going to end up getting into colleges that they don't belong in because they're not equipped and dropping out, or they're going to end up getting a job that they're not qualified for and end up getting fired. You know why? Because they were never equal in the first place. If we really want to have that kind of equity that they claim they want to have in the classroom and elsewhere, then we have to actually do the work. We can't do it by letting people slide.
And that's the truth right there, is that, the equality of opportunity is certainly something we all stand for, but every person is wired up differently, and therefore, success for any kid is determined by who the kid is, not by those standards. So let me ask you, Melanie, where does this go? We see the Biden administration doing this. Can Congress defund some of these Department of Education programs? Does it require a political change in the House, Senate, and in the White House? And at some point, doesn't this prove the case of school choice? Money follows the child school choice that might actually force these schools to wake up and smell the coffee?
It certainly does, because I think what people might not be aware of, when we talk about Title IX, we seem to really focus on college education, but make no mistake, this will apply to your public school education as well. And if you pay attention to the news, or you have a high school athlete, I am sure you're aware that this is taking place in high schools and middle schools. It's taking place everywhere where this is being allowed to stand, and it should not. It is a damage and a detriment to our girls. You want to talk about misogyny? I would argue this is the real misogyny.
Without question. Melanie, so what are you working on next? nationalcenter.org, go there, Project 21 column there. What are you working on before we have to let you go?
The next thing, I'm working on two things. I'm working on a book called The Angry Educator, which I hope to have out next year, and also the relaunch, I should say, of my show about money called How Money Works with Melanie Collette. I'm very
God
excited
bless
about
you.
both of those projects.
You should have been on the last segment because we have a whole living wage issue going on here in Charlottesville. And the great philosopher Angus Young, when he said, "What do you do for money, honey? How do you get your kicks?" But people don't want to admit that your wages are based on what you contribute to your employer and how replaceable that is. And I know your show has dealt with that subject before.
Certainly.
So God bless you for bringing it back. Where will people be able to find that?
You'll be able to find it anywhere you get your podcast. It's also on 98.7 The Coast here locally, where I live here in New Jersey. But anywhere where you get your podcast, you'll be able to pick up How Money Works with Melanie Collette.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Melanie, for your time this morning. God bless you, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me.
Your Tuesday forecast calls for increasing clouds throughout the day. Afternoon highs topping out in the mid-80s. There is a chance for an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Tuesday night, slight chance of a shower storm before midnight, otherwise mostly cloudy and 63. Wednesday, a chance of a shower storm late day, otherwise mostly sunny and 84. By Wednesday night, mostly clear and 58. On Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in. You can make comments to either 434-882-4217, or you can email them to jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com, and we'll take them in there. Again, if you do the phone-in thing, what you'll get is a voicemail, and then leave your comment or question as the message, and we'll play it back, and you'll get my reaction or response to it as well. It's such a bramble patch because as Hamas learned by watching our press and how our elected panderers treat marginalized oppressed groups that feel like they don't have as much because of some injustice that they infer. The same is true under mental health. What we're seeing are people who have truly been suffering with some mental health issue no longer be able to get that concern dealt with, that help dealt with. And that's, to me, the biggest crime in all of this, is that people who are hurting, people who are suffering in some way, shape, or form with who they are, and we've all done it. I mean, as God is my witness, we've all done it. We can't sit there and say, that's never happened to me, Joe. Then you're lying to yourself. And it doesn't make a difference whether you lie to me or anyone else who's watching the program. If you say it's never happened to you, you're lying to yourself. Maybe it happened a really, really long time ago, and you had to deal with it. I was just reading a piece about the real-life Rambo, Audie Murphy, for whom much of the Rambo character in First Blood, anyway, the book that led to the movie, and I'm talking about Audie Murphy, the movie star, was this guy who came back just tormented by what he had seen in the defeat of the Nazis in World War II and what had to be done to do that. And we did, I think, a very bad job after World War II in dealing with our veterans coming back from theater. We gave them incredible gifts with a GI Bill, and some of the things that our soldiers were given the opportunity to do were incredible. financial things, and many people took advantage of that. But many people, I mean, that wasn't what their issue was. Their issue wasn't financial. Their issue was, my God, did you see the horrors that we saw, especially those who liberated some of the concentration camps and the conditions that they saw, and they saw, came face to face with man's inhumanity to man. And we still grapple with this because it's not everybody. And see, that's the problem with authoritarianism. Authoritarian statism requires everyone to be the same. And we're not. And we're losing. I mean, it's so tenuously at the tip of our fingers, our ability to acknowledge the fact that we're all individual and we all see things differently. I was writing a biography of this show, I guess. Can a radio or TV show have a biography? I guess so. But I was writing one up for someone, and in it, I point out the fact that I understand that those who listen in radio, but also who tune into the successful podcasts, are generally sitting by themselves. Many people in media don't understand the fact that they may have millions of viewers, but most of them are doing it one, maybe two at a time. TV is a little different. You sit on the couch, you're sitting with your family or your kids or your wife or someone like that, so there's a little bit more of a communal affair with television. But radio, and I've found to be in podcasts as well, this individuality, this union, it's you and me. You may come to find out later that somebody else was also watching the program, and that's fine, well and good, but right now, where you're sitting, you're by yourself. And we've lost that individuality. I think this is part and parcel as to why radio as a medium is still successful, because it meets you where you are. You have the ultimate control. You can push that button and go find something you do like. And the peril that we face as creators of that media have to, I don't want them to push that button. Don't push that button. So we have to provide, the things that you need, you want. But at the same time, I think that we all feel that there's more, that we could be doing more. And we see it driving the wage issue. And the thing that bothers me is, and it's not partisan per se politically, I find that there's one political party where the people who don't fall prey to this congregate more frequently. But I think regardless of what political party you might be part of, the individual is the magic formula, and it's one of the reasons that the authoritarian European-style version of Western civilization is different than the United States version of Western civilization, and we're losing that grip on our difference. That certainly European authoritarian states acknowledge that the citizens are, in some abstract, important, but not for the same reason that the founders of this country thought that the individual was important, because the individual's sovereignty was the key, that you could go off and do whatever it is you wanted to do as long as you didn't infringe on somebody else's rights. We were good. And we would enact laws specifically detailing how on this earth we would punish you for violating somebody else's God-given rights. But we've crossed a Rubicon in social engineering where in an attempt to pander, we say, it's okay. And we've all done this too. Your friend is going through a problem and you have no particular good advice to give. You just tell them it'll be okay. Do you feel like that's been a useful analysis of their world? If you're anything like me, when you say that, you go, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. That's so lame. So we have to, and I don't think it's victim shaming to say to somebody, hey, you need help?
Your Tuesday forecast calls for increasing clouds throughout the day. Afternoon highs topping out in the mid-80s. There is a chance for an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Tuesday night, slight chance of a shower storm before midnight, otherwise mostly cloudy and 63. Wednesday, a chance of a shower storm late day, otherwise mostly sunny and 84. By Wednesday night, mostly clear and 58. On Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
In the morning. Thank you for joining in and taking some time out with us here. Again, you can make your comments to us in voicemail form at 434-882-4217. You can also do it by email by sending an email to jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com. Mac's coming up with his notebook. We're also going to check in with Eddie Garcia, running for U.S. Senate, our friends from the Alzheimer's Association as well. There are a couple of things. We were talking about the cost of wages or the cost of housing versus wages. And be careful, this is the Marxist march into people can't afford housing, so we need to pay them more. And this is what Hugo Chavez did in Venezuela. He artificially increased everyone's wages, and then the cost of everything went up. And then he said, well, then we're going to have to do something about the cost of everything. So what he did was he then instituted price controls, and that killed their economy. He had food riots after that, which I guess is preferable to a Marxist when the push comes to shove, because then you can send the police in and the chaos ensues. And this is always the issue, the economic collapse that leads to authoritarianism. It is part of the cycle that we've seen happen time and time again. Liberty is won, prosperity is earned, complacency replaces prosperity, protectionism moves in because the prosperity that has led to our complacency starts to become tenuous, and so we want to protect that prosperity, when really what we're doing is we're gripping it and it's just passing through our fingers like sand, which leads to poverty, which leads to anarchy, which leads to tyranny. Then tyranny has to be fought off, and the blood of patriots are again spilled to win liberty. And thus the cycle begins. Maybe, just maybe, we can hopefully stem that. There are people who have told me, scholarly people, who said, Joe, don't try to stop it. And I said, why in the world wouldn't I try to stop this cycle? And they said, well, think about other cycles we've tried to stop, Joe. Think about other places that we have inserted ourselves into the natural progression of things. Has it ever helped? Has it ever stopped something from happening? And they often will throw my own position on climate change at them. So is it our place to try to stop this cyclical march, which began with the Israelites? Honest to goodness, I mean, the Israelites said to Moses, you know, the food was better back in Egypt. You think maybe the Pharaoh is going to treat us nicer now that he saw what happened when we staged this walkout? I mean, if you look at it, this is the original trade union. The Israelites walk out on the Pharaoh. Moses leads them to freedom. Freedom means, well, you know, you got to fend for yourself. And so this isn't new. We didn't invent this. The Billy Joel song, we didn't start the fire. I mean, Moses was confronted with this. You know, God had to teach the Israelites a lesson, but I don't think it was a lesson that stayed taught. We just keep rebranding it, don't we? We deal in the same issue over and over again. And we somehow convince ourselves that this time it'll be different. So I mentioned this earlier on, and for those who may have just arose at 7, Red Cross, the tornado aid. People have asked me about the Oklahoma tornadoes. Back in the old days, the radio program actually had listeners in Oklahoma. And Seth, I hope you're still out there. Oklahoma's Red Cross, but there isn't a specific. You just go to redcross.org and you can make a contribution there. You can also go to OK, let me make sure I read this right, okdisasterhelp.org. okdisasterhelp.org. You can also then /donate on that web address. And then the Salvation Army in Oklahoma is also on the ground helping those devastated by the tornadoes over the weekend. southernusa.salvationarmy.org. I don't know if you saw this. The FCC has issued fines for data sharing. You say, what? It's not what you think. The Federal Communications Commission has issued fines to some of the biggest technology companies for sharing and selling your data to marketing firms without your express permission to do so. And there's some pretty hefty fines in this ruling, in this FCC finding. But the bigger point is that it doesn't stop the data companies. As a matter of fact, it teaches the data companies that really the only person who should have this kind of access to your personal data is the government. So before you stop and say, oh my gosh, the FCC finally got it right, there's $200 million in fines, which sounds like a lot to you and me, but it's not as bad as it would be. Several of the nation's largest cell phone carriers have been collectively fined. The story, Stefan Kat Kate, pardon me, at the Epoch Times, reporting $200 million by the Federal Communications Commission for illegally sharing access to customer location data without consent and failing to protect that information from unauthorized disclosures. Now, so this is beyond just what you've browsed for, that you may have been looking for a new set of headphones or something like that. This is actually where you are and sharing that location. Now, there is part of digital marketing called geocaching. It's kind of like, Pokemon Go. Only what businesses want to do is they want to find out when you're in an area and then target ads that say, hey, if you're in this area, such and such restaurant is a great place for Thai food. And I'm sure you go to a concert. It's particularly popular. Blake Shelton is playing somewhere, and you're out in front of the arena where Blake Shelton is playing, and you get a text message saying, "Hey, so and so's Thai restaurant is only 3/4 of a mile from you, and it's 5-star rated, whatever, by Google Maps." And you say, "Well, gosh, that's kind of weird, but it's handy to know because I like Thai food." Because it also knows that from your browsing history. But it's sharing this information now with marketing companies without your explicit permission. Now, there's an upside to that, not. The section prohibits of the Communications Act, prohibits carriers from disclosing customer information except as required by law or with the individual's permission. And that's the key part of this, as required by law. What does that mean? It means that the Communications Act says that if the Virginia State Police want to know where you are, generally speaking, they might have to go before a judge to get a warrant. But in many cases, they can backdoor around and in. Facebook Messenger and these kind of things will give them some indication. These are some of the same privacy protections that a lot of people were concerned about when we started talking about miles driven taxes. And the idea that, oh well, it's a usage fee, Joe. It's nothing more than that. Why shouldn't the Department of Transportation know what roads you drive on? Because if you're driving into Washington, D.C., they should charge you a congestion toll, just like they do in London. So many cars there. Of course we should charge you because you're not using mass transit, which means you're taking money out of the mouths of those transit drivers. But how do you do that without the government actually knowing where you are at any given moment? And it's not that possibility doesn't exist. This fine proves that it is very usable. It's just like when Google said, oh, we don't throttle down people's web search results. Sure you do, because anyone who's started a business and gone to Google to promote their business knows that Google will charge you money to increase the chances that your search results show up in that upper right-hand corner, the first 5 or 6 results in which they call the golden triangle. According to the FCC, the story in the Epoch Times goes on, AT&T has been fined $57 million, Verizon hit with $47 million in fines, Sprint and T-Mobile, which have merged, are seeing $92 million total between the two. FCC Chair Jessica Rosenworcel said that these carriers all failed in their fundamental duty required by law to protect customers' data from businesses. These carriers failed to protect the information entrusted to them except where prescribed by law, meaning when the government wants to know where you are. Then these carriers won't be fined, they'll be rewarded. As a matter of fact, we know that each one has an NSA or a Department of Homeland Security office there.
Tuesday forecast calls for increasing clouds throughout the day. Afternoon highs topping out in the mid-80s. There is a chance for an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Tuesday night, slight chance of a shower storm before midnight, otherwise mostly cloudy and 63. Wednesday, a chance of a shower storm late day, otherwise mostly sunny and 84. By Wednesday night, mostly clear and 58. On Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in, letting us do what we do for you here. Rumble, YouTube, however you, and please share this with your friends. The more the merrier, because otherwise I'm just the sound of one hand clapping here. Joining us now to take us inside the sports headlines, he's got his notebook runneth over. He is the great Mac McDonald. Good morning, Mac. How are you doing, sir? And thank you for yet again chronicling on the field where they play for pay.
Yeah,
which
and pretty
includes
soon
college now too.
Well, exactly. Pretty soon it's going to be pay for play, which I'll get into in just a minute, because the NCAA is in a big case now, and their college plaintiffs going back saying, okay, and the NCAA thinks that they could lose this case to a tune of $4 billion to pay athletes who feel that because the NIL was not active at the time they were playing, that now they're going after back pay. So I'll get into it. Yeah, anyway, we'd like to thank the Pelicans and Lakers for participating. Denver ended LA's season and maybe LeBron James' career. More on that in a little bit. Gosh. Jamal Murray, questionable for Game 5, did it again. He hit the winning basket in the final 3 seconds. Turned the clock back 3 minutes in that game. The Lakers lost a timeout with a challenge, and it cost them after the Murray hoop. LA could only try a half-court shot instead of advancing the ball to the front court with a TO. Remember, timeouts are like cell phone minutes. You can't carry them over, right? Well, but why listen to me? Let Kevin Harlan take us home with another Jamal Murray game winner.
Difference of 2 seconds, the game clock and the shot clock. Jokic a screen, Murray to try to break the tie.
No timeout by the Lakers. I got to go.
James, a bump, a feed, a Prince shot. No! Zeros on the clock. The Nuggets advance. And the defense of their championship title is alive and well.
He's alive and well. Murray finished with 32. LeBron, when quizzed about his future, simply said, I'm not going to answer that right now, so thanks for asking. Nuggets of Minnesota in the conference semifinals, TBD. OKC will now wait for the Mavericks-Clippers series to end. The Thunder stormed past New Orleans, winning 97-89. The Celtics got 38 from Derek White, 102-88 the final. A 7-year vet from Colorado. Who knew? He propelled Boston to a 3-1 lead in the East first-round game. White booked 8 threes, and he scored 38 with no free throws. He also becomes the first Celtic with a 35-plus 3-rebound game since snow cones were invented in the summer. All right. A national sweep in South Beach, 7-2, the win Monday. That's 6 of the last 9. Marlins are just 6-24. They're awful. A crowd of 6,300 looking on yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Nats head to Texas to play the Rangers in a 3-game set. Orioles shut out the Yankees 2-0. Grayson Rodriguez, 5 2/3. No runs, but it was another Gunner stunner. The O's lefty, Gunnar Henderson, goes yard in the first and becomes the youngest Oriole to hit 10 dingers before May 1st. Listen.
7th pitch to Gunner leading off the game, and Henderson drills it right field down the line. That's a Gunner. Oh, that thing got out of here in a nanosecond. Another leadoff Gunner stunner, and the Orioles.
This from a kid who began his career in Baltimore, going 4 for 43.
Oh my God.
The shortstop is hitting 289, has 23 ribbies, which is tied for 7th, and OPS of 983, and that's 8th best in the league.
I like the nickname though. It's a Gunner Goner.
It's a Gunner Goner. It's a Gunner Stunner. You could do. Yeah. I mean, How many kids are going to name Gunner? I wish I would have. My dad would have had the foresight. I'm going to name you Gunner. You know.
Well, that's it. I mean, what were their parents thinking? I know my uncle.
Oh, I love that name. I think that's terrific.
And somewhere in Connecticut, there's a great lawyer named Matthew Crawford who is named Matthew because my uncle said, "I want to hear John Condon at Madison Square Garden playing forward for the New York Rangers, Matthew Crawford."
Yeah.
You know, and that's but parents think that sometimes, don't they?
As I tell our kids in the classroom, if you really want a name that's going to rock, go with Justin Case. I think that's the best one. I'm Justin Case, CNN. I just think that would be perfect. All right, so the leaders now, in a few minutes, just a couple of minutes on this, because I know Joe will love this. The leaders of college sports now are involved in deep discussions to reach a legal settlement that is going to lay out the framework for sharing revenue with athletes in a future NCAA business model. Basically, what's happening is that the NCAA's thing, they're going to lose this case to people who are going back and saying, all right, you owe me money because Neil wasn't available, so now you owe me dollars. And so what's happening is it's House versus NCAA. It includes two separate classes of plaintiffs. The damages class is composed of former college athletes from the past several years who are saying the NCAA owes them back pay for the money they could have earned.
Oh gosh!
If they had been allowed to sign nil deals. What's Tiki and Rondé Barber going to do? Are they going to step up now and go, where was our, we could have made $1 gazillion as twins with the same university. And so anyway, so now the injunctive class includes current college athletes who argue that any of the existing restrictions on what types of nil deals athletes could sign are also illegal. Because now they're saying, you can't tell me what I can't sign. If I want to represent, Rachel's Gentlemen's Business Club, okay? If I want to represent a tattoo parlor, if I want to represent CBD oil and how to get your best gummies, if I want to do that, then I should be able to do that. The NCAA is saying, no, wait, we still want to control it. So the NCAA wants some cap, and at least the NCAA, who we have all ripped for a long, long time, at least the NCAA saying, okay, we'll get rid of this we'll sweep this $4 billion thing and we'll go ahead and pay it with a long-term deal. Finally, the NCAA and somebody stepped forward and go, all right, we got to put a cap on this, and we got to realize that the schools, there's got to be a cap for everybody, whether it's 20 million or 10 million or 15 million, whatever, that says, all right, Alabama, you're at 20 million, and Tennis Fuzz State, you're at 20 million. So you can now at least level the playing field a little bit, because it's so out of whack with how and then you throw in the portal where schools are making phone calls to guys who are in the portal and go, all right, come play for us. We've already got your car deal. We've already got your Mercedes, and we've got you 10 million. Okay. So just go ahead, pack it up, come play with us. And I'm talking about kids who hadn't even thought about going into the portal are being contacted now. Right. So Joe, bottom line, it's a mess. Once again, the NCAA and college athletics, it's a mess. And some of the states now, I know, I'll leave you with this real quick, because I know some of the states now are calling college athletes employees in the documents that are being filed that you're now an employee. Or they are employees, So it's a mess.
It's almost like you and I could have predicted this, Mac. Oh, hold it, I think we did.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, should I graduated Northwest Missouri State in 1975. Should I call them, as a former 3-year voice of the Bearcats now? I could have paid for my school, my whopping $400 a semester. Well, I could have paid for that had I had endorsement deals.
But the ridiculousness of this is I can't go back to Queens College and say, hey, to some business that didn't exist back then. Because remember, name, image, likeness is supposed to be, Carter Myers Automotive paying somebody to say, I drive a Volvo. That I can't go back to a business that doesn't exist anymore because they were a pizzeria near my college and saying, well, I was going to be a famous broadcaster, and so I could have gotten some name, image, likeness money. I mean, this is what happens when these organizations try to feign that they can control this stuff. They should have, it's either you can or you can't. And never the twain shall meet. And lost in the whole thing is, certainly the president has told us that your college tuition is valueless anyway, because he's just continuing to find ways to pay them back for you. But these college athletes who were getting $50, $60, $70, $100,000 worth of tuitions paid for their efforts on the football field.
Yeah, it's again, and to go into retro mode here, and with the NCAA, and it's just lawyer after lawyer after lawyer. And is there any reason why Nick Saban stepped away? I mean, he could have coached another 5 years, health wise, age wise. Doesn't matter. He could have easily coached another 5 years. He wanted nothing to do with this. He wanted nothing to do with the recruiting of the University of Georgia, poaching Alabama players. With phone calls, hey, going to portal, we got a hell of a deal for you, because that's the arms race now. I mean, the NFL doesn't even do that. The NFL, they wait for a guy to go free agency, and they may recruit him and talk about, okay, come negotiate with us. Has nothing to do with their marketing side.
But a lot of these kids, most of the states in the union have restrictions on what these kids can do in terms of signing a contract, a legal binding contract anyway, until you're 18 in most states.
Yeah, I mean, this is a long way from the days when Ralph Sampson was being recruited by Kentucky and being given a job in the summer of turning on a sprinkler at Churchill Downs. And so he just had to turn on the sprinkler and turn it off. And, oh, by the way, we're going to give you a couple $1,000 a month.
I love that. I love that.
You think I'm kidding that story? And
for
Ralph
people
Ralph told me that story a long time ago. Can you imagine the stuff that Ralph doesn't talk about half of what was going on?
Oh, sure. But I mean, it's a lot of it. It just
we're
comes
talking
down
early
to this,
'80s.
It's this idea, this false narrative that this can be controlled. And we were just doing a segment
Good point.
an hour
you said
ago.
It's a false narrative. That's so good.
About Title IX. How because wait till the Title IX suits start playing out, where women athletes are saying, well, hold it, where's my name, image, likeness money?
Because I deserve, and they do. I deserve equal pay for equal play, because if it becomes pay for play, which is the direction we are headed, then I don't care if women's basketball is only putting 5,000 butts in seats when the men are putting 15,000 butts in seats as far as basketball is concerned. I don't care. That's not my job. That's the marketing job to get people here. I don't care if we're 7 and 15.
Ask Caitlin Clark. Is that cereal still up there?
There it is.
Caitlin Crunch. Yeah.
Caitlin Crunch. There it is. Yeah.
Come on up.
It's just it's going to point, and it'll be funny. Not funny, fun to at least follow this lawsuit now to see what happens next.
Curiosity. You teach. This has got to be a great opportunity for the kids that you teach at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. If you're wondering, Mac is their program director there. I mean, are the kids getting this, or are they just out there looking for a PR gig?
No, they don't. Our students really don't follow the ins and outs of or something that's got this many intricacies. They don't. They just want to do highlights and yell Jamal Murray with a 3. They don't really get into the
what an opportunity
side and so on and so forth. It's funny, Joe. And I don't mind being out of school to tell this because it's going to probably be in my book one day. But when I got back in '96 to Charlottesville and was doing Virginia, they made WNA your competition. They made Mac mugs, okay, and so then there was Brown Olds and Real Estate 3, and there were a lot of people who jumped on the morning show bandwagon and wanted me to do the endorsements, whatever. Well, finally, CBS said, we got to stop Mac. And they put a cap on what I could do. And
Right, 'cause you were
I
working for
agreed. They
them.
didn't want to, they didn't want to overexpose, and that Mac's doing every, Tom, Dick, and Harry commercial and whatever. And then they said they got to spend money with UVA if Mac's going to do the commercial. There was a lot of negotiation about it. I go, you guys taking money out of my pocket. So I had to negotiate, give me 3 or 4. But then the capper was when I got asked by a radio station to go on a trip to Cabo or Cancun or wherever it was, and they didn't think that I deserved it. So one of the sports marketing officials at UVA went on the vacation saying that Mac really shouldn't go because that he's already making too much money.
Oh, well, there you go. And now think
There
about our
you go.
friend John Freeman at UVA. Now he's competing against the starting quarterback for endorsements. That's a bad scene. Maybe where's his lawsuit anyway?
I never thought I needed an agent at that time. But when Wood Seeley, who was my dear friend, who's now at Old Dominion, Dr. Wood, who's the AD at Old Dominion, said, well, Mac, remember, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. I'll never forget that line. I went, okay, did you just call me a pig? I mean, anyway, it was.
What level of insult should I take that as?
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's the way I still laugh. And
but remember,
things are,
when people say that to you, the Bible says, "Don't touch me." All right. So anyway, Mac, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, sir.
That's in there somewhere. All right. See you tomorrow, brother.
Your Tuesday forecast calls for increasing clouds throughout the day. Afternoon highs topping out in the mid-80s. There is a chance for an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Tuesday night, slight chance of a shower storm before midnight, otherwise mostly cloudy and 63. Wednesday, a chance of a shower storm late day, otherwise mostly sunny and 84. By Wednesday night, mostly clear and 58. On Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining us, and and all the folks who have been sending me screen caps now of their car radios, their fancy Bluetooth car radios with Joe Thomas in the morning through Rumble on there. I don't know if YouTube's app doesn't do that or not, but I appreciate the folks who have been able to recreate the old radio vibe by putting us in their fancy Bluetooth things. Where I grew up, Bluetooth just meant you were living on the poor side of town. But joining us now to talk a little bit about the things going on at the Alzheimer's Association of Central and Western Virginia. It's good to have Mary Sandridge back on the program. Good morning, Mary. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Joe. Just fine, thank you. Thought I would wear my longest day hat since we were in the midst of longest day season.
So talk about, and longest day is one of the signature Alzheimer's Association events, but it's based at the summer solstice. And with, 90-something degrees yesterday, I think we all started to feel the summer solstice getting closer and closer, Mary. So how are we doing towards getting teams together for the Alzheimer's Association?
Well, the longest day started focused on the longest day of the year, June 21st, but it has evolved into an event where people do events any time of the year. You host an event, whatever you want to do, and then the money goes to the longest day. So in Charlottesville, we have a lot of people doing individual things, but Greencroft Club has once again stepped up to host their third annual pickleball tournament. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk about pickleball a little bit. The longest day has what we call global teams. And global teams are organizations that have committed to raise a certain amount of money for the longest day. Mm-hmm. And pickleball is one of them.
Wow, it's come a long way. I actually heard an ad, Mary, yesterday, one of these insurance companies that have stolen all the good comedy writers out of television, all the various national insurance companies, because let's face it, just if you're going to do an ad for insurance, just be weird. Pickleball has finally made it into these ads for these national insurance chains, but it has caught on. And Charlottesville, really, I feel like Charlottesville is almost like the Cooperstown of pickleball. We have some long-time pickleball stars around here.
We do. And the UVA has a pickleball team, and I think they won a national championship too. So who knew?
Appropriate.
Yeah, who knew? But we're excited about the event at Greenwood. We want it to grow year to year. So we know there are other tournaments in other places, but come out and support this one because the money will go to Alzheimer's care, research, and support of people who need our programs and services. May 18th and 19th this year, a little bit later in May than we have been, but we're excited about it. Jason Grigg is the pickleball pro at Greencroft, and he is busy signing up teams.
And do you, if I remember correctly, and maybe it's changed over time, and I'm curious now, considering my last conversation with Mac, if the UVA pickleball team has a name, image, likeness director. But aside from that, I think there are different levels. Like if you're like me and you have no idea how to play pickleball, you can still participate in like different grades, correct?
I believe so. We have both singles and doubles, and I'm sure there will be some opportunity for some education and pickleball rules and so forth. We need volunteers too to come out to this event, so that's a great way to come out and learn more about pickleball too.
And that's just one of the many different ways. The longest day is a celebration of doing the things that you love to do for as long as you can do them, Mary, and then you collect sponsorships just the way somebody who is running in a marathon might collect sponsorships per mile or whatever, and then that money all goes to help maintain things like the toll-free hotlines, correct?
Correct. Our 24-hour helpline that goes to our contact center is there all the time, operating in 300 languages, I think. We know that people call it during the day with just basic questions about our events, our support groups, but then a lot of people call it in the middle of the night because they don't know what to do about a certain behavior that someone may be exhibiting in their home or trying to get out, going to wander, just all kinds of things. And the people who answer these phones at our contact center are master's level clinicians. They will take the time to answer your questions however long it takes.
And I have called that toll-free hotline, and they are incredible. It was a Christmas day. I did it. People have heard that story. Mary Sandridge, Director of Communications for the Alzheimer's Association of Central and Western Virginia. Is there a limit to what somebody could do? I mean, if they just want to say, I'm going to listen to every episode of the Joe Thomas in the Morning podcast on Rumble start to finish. I mean, you could do that as long as the monies go to the Alzheimer's Association, right?
Sure, you could. Absolutely. You can sign up at alz.org/TLD for the longest day. And that's the beauty of this event. You can do anything. We have a gentleman who's going to be swimming again off the coast of Nag's Head to honor his mother. You might remember he did that last year. And while he was in the ocean for 13 hours, she passed away.
Oh, dear.
So, and he's back this year to honor her. We have a big concert happening in Suffolk, a country music concert in Suffolk later this month to raise money, a big event. We have golf tournaments in Richmond, several. We just have a lot of things going on for the longest day. So if you don't want to sign up, you don't want to host an event, that's a little bit much. We have many that you can participate in and still support the longest day.
And the point of the phrase "the longest day" is exactly what you were saying about the toll-free hotline. It's there 24/7 because, let's face it, most of the questions about what do I do, they happen after sundown. Sundowners is a very, very big part of the Alzheimer's spectrum, if you will. But those what do I do? How do I answer this? More frequently than not, I think, happens outside of the 9 to 5 business hours.
Absolutely, it does. And we know, we've had young caregivers, teenagers, 20-somethings call in the middle of the night because they are caregivers for parents and grandparents. A lot of times it's just amazing who ends up calling that number, but we are there 24 hours a day, every day of the year.
And you mentioned 20-somethings and everything. I know that they're also during the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which will be later on in the year. We have a lot of college kids who, through their fraternal organizations, which have taken some hits in the news lately, they do an awful lot of this fundraising through their groups, right?
Sigma Kappa is a huge one. We have Sigma Kappa chapters at JMU, Virginia Tech, UVA, who raise an incredible amount of money for us. That JMU Sigma Kappa team over the years has been at the very top of the list of Sigma Kappas across the chapter in their fundraising efforts. So they are volunteers, but all during the year, they are fundraising for the Walk to End Alzheimer's. We also have the Sigma Mu fraternity. They call themselves the Sammies. We are also their philanthropy. So they do a lot of fundraising for us. And then, of course, we have the college groups that have started, like Indolls at VT and Who's for Memory at UVA. Just college groups that are supporting us through awareness events and also through fundraising.
Again, find out more about Longest Day or in any way, shape, or form, because I know the last time we spoke, you're also looking for folks who can go out and maybe speak to chambers of commerce or different groups as a spokesperson, and you train them up, but certainly you want somebody with the passion, correct?
We do. We are very excited about a new thing that we have, an awareness presentation. It's about a 10-minute presentation that you will be equipped with and trained on to go out and make the presentation in your communities, wherever you would like to make those presentations. And we're not putting quotas on you. You don't have to do 10 in a year or 2 in a month. It is just equipping you to be our voice in the community, to be able to talk more about the association, who we are, and what we do.
Mary Sandridge, it's alz.org/CWVA. Thank you so much for everything you do, and I'm glad to have you back on the program.
Thank you, Joe. We're glad to be back.
Your Tuesday forecast calls for increasing clouds throughout the day. Afternoon highs topping out in the mid-80s. There is a chance for an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Tuesday night, slight chance of a shower storm before midnight, otherwise mostly cloudy and 63. Wednesday, a chance of a shower storm late day, otherwise mostly sunny and 84. By Wednesday night, mostly clear and 58. On Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in and letting us do the bits that we do for you to try to cover everything we can here and subject you to this visage anyway, because let's face it, who wants to look at this? My wife sleeps in, so she doesn't have to look at this first thing in the morning, but you guys have been incredible there, and share this once you get it online. Like William Shatner before me, people will see more of me in reruns than they will see me on the the air live, it seems like, although the numbers are growing, the people who are downloading the Rumble app and then Bluetoothing it into their car, that's an honor to me, because it's extra steps. And my industry, we kind of grew up in that world of the harder you make it on somebody to do something, the less likely it is they're going to do it. And, it's just like my dad's business, which was have it your way, the ultimate in the American fast food chain, have it your way. This is the most American expression of all. And when it was their business model, they found that there was, it was maybe 20% at its maximum, the number of people who would come in and say, hey, you know what, I want one of them Whopper thingies with no pickles. I don't like pickles. Onions, probably one of the most popular things to have taken off of a sandwich. A couple of notes in here from the YouTube channel. Gary in Berlin, New Hampshire, listening to our segment earlier on with Melanie Collette from Project 21. Kids in 1933 learned a lot more than the unruly mushheads of today. I think referring back to Albemarle County's Build-A-Burg budget, build a school budget, where they're just going to continue to build new schools, because that's what you do if you're a school board, is you build more schools. And I pointed out that my education is the fruit of a high school that is still in use today, but was built in 1933 as part of President Roosevelt's Make Work projects. It's still not full. Sure, it looks like the front building of a penitentiary. So what? Look forward to getting out and going to school, kids. It's produced great intellects like your humble host, as well as perhaps lesser intellects like the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, who was a classmate of mine. Joining us now from the campaign trail, an intellect of his own gravity, he is Eddie Garcia, running to be the GOP nominee for Senate. Good morning, Eddie. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning, Joe. I'm doing great. Great pleasure to be here. I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you. At some point, we'll be back on the radio, too, so then we'll be able to share this with even more people there. But, so Eddie, I know that you were, I was just reading some of your more recent posts, and a lot of it right now has to do with the subject we were talking about earlier on today, is veterans care. I brought up the fact we were talking about I was just reading a story about Audie Murphy, the great movie star, who apparently was, according to a biography, was the source material for the movie Rambo, because of what he saw when he was fighting in World War II, and how he struggled with the PTSD even when he came back from theater then. Talk about what Senator Eddie Garcia yourself would be trying to do for the veterans communities with your personal experiences.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it is a personal experience. I mean, I'm a combat veteran myself. I've deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan 3 times each, as amongst a bunch of other deployments in Africa and throughout the Middle East. Sadly, what we see is a spike in veteran homelessness over at least the last data that was brought out. And more veterans are struggling with the effects of 22 years of nonstop Middle Eastern overseas conflicts and warfare. It's had a detriment. It's had this toll on veterans now for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And so there was a brief period of time within the VA system that during the last administration, during the Trump administration, where he was trying to clean some house inside the VA system and increase the quality of health care. I got to tell you, I continuously hear the opposite now of down when I'm in the Southwest and near the Roanoke area of the VA system, that the VA hospital that's out there. There's a lot of veterans that are being forgotten about. Their care is taking way too long. They can't see a doctor, and we're short docs across the entire country, mm-hmm. first and foremost. So that's its own problem. Right. There's 1,000 counties in America that don't have primary care physicians. That's a problem. That's a problem with our immigration system. It's a problem with the way Congress has done and some of the lobbying efforts in the past that have shrunken hospital residency programs that limit the amount of people coming out of medical school that are able to practice and then get into the field. that's a long checkered history that I'm trying to speak on as well. But specifically to veterans, we got to increase veteran health care. We ask these men and women to serve this nation, voluntarily serve this nation, and put themselves in harm's way at the expense of their lives, at the expense of the lives of their families, their children, everybody who has to suffer. Sadly, some people have lost their lives overseas, and then the ramifications of that when they do come back and they are having issues that we ask them to go into, it's our duty as a nation to care for them. And far too often, people in Congress continue to play political football games with veterans' health care and the monies associated with that health care. I say I want to make veterans' health care and the medical costs associated with that. I want to make that mandatory. We need to put that mandatory money so that they can't hang it over everybody's head. Anytime Congress, whoever's in Congress, wants to pass something difficult, they attach something to veterans' health care in there. True. So it makes it impossible for anybody politically to vote against it. It's wrong. We got to stop doing that. I'm a 22-year Army veteran. I got a veteran-centric message. I want to increase healthcare access across the country, but specifically across the Commonwealth of Virginia.
You talked about the Trump administration and the Vets Choice program, and it wasn't perfect, but it certainly put a more individual spin on it. And I think about the VA hospitals and the struggles that President Trump had in trying to get that cleaned up in general and working better. But any bureaucratic approach, it's always been my view, is going to be less efficient than allowing the citizen to do as they see fit. And would you be a fan of getting back into the Vets Choice program and making it better, Eddie?
Absolutely. The more choices veterans have, the better off we're going to be. The problem relies on the outside of the veteran space. Like I said, there's a shortage of medical practitioners across the nation, and who does that affect? That affects the elderly. It affects the folks that are disabled, and it affects poor. The low-income communities that can't travel 100, 150 miles to see a primary care manager. And the way these referral systems are set up now, you can't do anything. If you break your foot, you know you broke your foot. You fell down the steps or something. You can't just go and get your foot fixed. You have to go to a primary care manager. They got to take your blood pressure. They got to take your temperature. They got to ask you if you're feeling suicidal. They do all this other stuff. And then they set you another appointment later on down the line with somebody that's going to look at your foot. That's the type of process that infuriates so many people. And then you're infuriating a group of people who have post-traumatic stress on top of that.
Right.
And the outcomes are almost never good.
So you mentioned the healthcare, and I don't want to tangent on this, but I was around. We were doing this radio program back on the air in Charlottesville in 07, 08, 09, 10 as they voted for the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And one of the things that we covered frequently on the old radio program was the fact that this was potentially going to lead into what you're just talking about, which is a shortage of healthcare providers. How does Senator Garcia address that?
Well, I think the fastest way we could address it is honestly, it's through an immigration system that encourages the people that we need to be here with the skills that we need to be here. There are medical practitioners around the world that would love to come to America, but for some reason, unless they crossed our border illegally, they can't get here, which is a problem because what we've seen over the last 30 years or so, back into the 90s, we saw that the medical associations had lobbied to reduce the amount of residency programs that are offered to medical students coming out of medical school. And so because we have, say, 43,000 medical students coming out of medical school, and we're only limited to about 38,000 residency programs, you got a bottleneck there. And so those students aren't able to get into the programs, and those program graduates can't get out into the field. And so we've seen this over 30 years now restrain the supply of medical practitioners, doctors, nurses. And so the effects that's having, supply and demand 101, when there are fewer of something, they become more expensive. Mm-hmm. And now it's more expensive to get a doctor, to be in front of a real doctor. and there's less of them. So it's getting harder and harder because of government bureaucracy. We have to increase the amount of medical practitioners. We got to release any caps on the residency programs. We got to rebuild these community hospitals to these rural areas, especially in Virginia. We got a lot of people in the valley in the Southwest that can't be seen. People in the Southwest I talked to this weekend, they have to go to Tennessee to seek care. That shouldn't be even in the cards for them. They shouldn't have to do that. It's time to start solving some of these problems to these communities that politicians in D.C. have just quite frankly forgotten.
Eddie Garcia is on with us, running for Senate at Eddie Garcia VA is how you follow him on X. I want to pivot a little bit because you talked about your military service overseas in the Middle East. Over the last 20 years, the Senate deals in our foreign relations, our treaties, those sorts of things. Taking a look at what's going on the college campuses, we just had a bunch of Justice for Palestine protesters arrested in Austin, Texas, for disrupting class activities. They demand that they should be allowed to do so under the free speech guise, which I'm not sure they have in Tehran, but I can check. Talk about where we are and why you mentioned tagging all these things together. Why can't we discuss Israel, Ukraine, all these things separately without, making them attached to things like, continuing to keep the government even open?
Well, let's make no mistake about this, and this is important for everybody to understand, that there are people in the Republican Party, too, that are on the side that are not on with the majority of the Republican base. There are people in Congress. Congress is not acting on behalf of the people. The vast majority of people, as far as overseas contingency operations is concerned, Ukraine specifically, are against the funding in Ukraine. The overwhelming majority of Americans, left, right, center, and elsewhere. But yet they just keep forcing their will upon us. It's time for change, and that includes both parties in that situation. I'm strictly in favor of independent appropriations bills that you vote on a topic that is germane to the issue at hand in which you're voting on, and you don't attach any of these non-germane items. And that's a big word, but that just means having anything to do with one particular subject. And if we're gonna talk about funding Ukraine, well, then the vote should be on funding Ukraine. If you want to talk about voting on the border, then the vote should be funding on the border. Mixing and matching and trying to make these huge bills that don't have anything necessarily to do with one another, just so you can bypass the will of the people on a particular issue, it has got to change. This is DC politics at its worst.
Well,
we've been it for 30 years.
Isn't it also, and I've made this point, actually talked about it on Friday of this past week, the word oversight has been lost in this. People say, well, why aren't you for helping Ukraine? I said, I'm not against helping somebody who's trying to battle an invading army. I would just like to be able to see where the money is going and what it's being used on, because I just feel like the more people jump on this bandwagon of you shouldn't have to see what, just send them the money, gosh darn it, the more I worry that this is some great money laundering scheme where the money is just coming back to American companies that we haven't appropriated it for, nor do we know who's spending it on what.
Well, that's exactly what we're seeing, and I mean, and legislation is written into the bills that are not requiring accountability for these funds. That's astonishing to me that would even fly, and anybody would vote for it, regardless of whether you think the money should go there or not. You should still be able to account for it. But these dollar amounts are so large, people have become immune, I guess, to the amount of them. Absolutely. What we're seeing, and this is part of my message, so welcome to the Garcia campaign, Joe, is that Washington, D.C. continues to take in taxpayer dollars from the rest of America, and they enrich themselves. They enrich themselves and their consultants and their fundraisers and their lobbyists and the military-industrial complex that floats around, and everybody gets paid off the taxpayer dollars, and we get poor and they get richer. They get bigger and stronger, and we get smaller and less influential. We have to change these things. So right now, we got a government that comes at us. What we're supposed to do is have a government that comes from us. And to get a government that comes from us, we're going to need campaigns and candidates that come from us as well, which is why I'm out here running, trying to build the coalition I need across 11 congressional districts across this Commonwealth with 8 million plus people, and get them on the Garcia train for the U.S. Senate in 2024.
All right, so and I know that a lot of people, it's what was the expression, the nerd prom. So we're going to get into the wonkiness, because voting begins in what 4 days, doesn't it, Eddie?
This Friday,
Yep.
May 3rd, vote Garcia. Yes, it does.
And all the Star Wars fans are glad it didn't start on May the 4th. But May the 3rd, we start our 45-day primary election season for this. Culminates on June 18th. What do you need from folks to join in on your team? Because there's 5 folks on the ballot. I think 2 of them just made it in by the skin of their teeth when it came to the signatures necessary. Talk about what you need from folks who can help make that differentiation point, because I still don't think the race is getting the kind of coverage. So, folks who may have heard a name before may just fall like, oh, I've heard of him before or them before, and therefore I'll just vote for them.
Well, the first thing they can do, anybody out there that's listening or watching can do, is go to eddiegarciava.com. That's my website, eddiegarciava.com. You get a background on me and who I am and where I come from. I'm the son of a ranch hand who spent 22 years in the military, finished my career working federal issues for the Pentagon while I was in uniform with the House and the U.S. Senate. So now we're running for federal office. I also have where I stand on a whole host of issues, to include some of the ones we talked about. I'd ask that you check me out and that you share that information. You share my website and you go to Eddie Garcia VA on any of the social media platforms. And check some of my videos, some of my content out, where I stand on all these issues. Tell your friends, show up May 3rd. Don't wait until later on, because people forget and the weather gets bad and things come up and life happens and all those things. I need you to show up early on May 3rd, vote for Eddie Garcia, and tell your friends to do the same, and then come back 2 days later on Monday and vote, and bring a friend to have them vote for Eddie Garcia, and the next day bring another friend. And then if you run out of friends, give the campaign a call or send an email, and we'll find friends for you to take to the polls, because it's that important. It's all about turnout. This is sadly, we're going to have a small turnout because it's just kind of off election, because the presidential election already took place, the primary already took place, and this one falls in between the general. So it's going to be about turnout. I have signs, I have bumper stickers. You go to my social media and share. There's a whole bunch of things you can do that don't cost a dime that I'm asking people to support me in. If you do want to donate, you can also do that at eddiegarciava.com.
Eddie, thanks for catching up with us. Good luck. Like I said, like you said, Friday it begins, and we will find the opponent for Senator Kaine for November. You have a great week, and again, it's eddiegarciava.com, correct?
Correct. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. And let me get a couple of real quickies here before we have to vacate the premises and give up our spot to the next show. I think I just have to move my shop vac in here. Dr. Clark says, I've got a head cold. I don't think voice message would sound good. Are you sure it's not an allergy? Because we're having the green powder wars here in Central Virginia. My wife just texted me and she said, stop touching your nose. I'm just signaling the rest of my crew, the sting is on. That's what we're, it's Henry Gondorf in the morning, this morning. But Dr. Clark was talking about our visit with Melanie Collette from Project 21. She began her segment on Title IX saying, if a person had, quote, a feeling that they were a sex or gender other than as they were created, the current regime holds the position that those feelings must be affirmed to the point of allowing them to compete in areas that they would not be allowed to compete without their feelings. I've taken some license and expanded a bit, but I don't think we'd be in disagreement. What struck me on the feelings statement was that I read an article just the other day on polling numbers on the economy. 85% of the people in New York City say the cost of groceries is outpacing their income. 60% think the economy is bad. And a spokesman for the current regime replies to those polls by saying that those are just people's feelings. I see where you're going with this. The spokesperson said those are misplaced feelings and that people are just looking at the wrong numbers. The number of people who are looking at the cost of gasoline to get back and forth to work, the cost of groceries to feed their children, the cost of housing. It's kind of funny about feelings. Some need to be affirmed, damn the damage done. Others, well, those are just feelings, mistaken feelings. Well, but that's the case, and there I go again. I'm feeling my nose again. I'm sorry, but with green powder on every single thing I own, including the pets, it's just one of those things that you deal with because itching does happen every now and then. Thank you for tuning in and watching and surviving through the nose touching. And if you're ready, I think Robert Shaw is about to join us on the set. So until tomorrow morning, so long, and thanks for all the fish.